Welcome to The Watching Dead, the officially unofficial podcast for The Walking Dead on AMC. I'm Jim.
I'm A.Rron.
And today we're talking about Season 7, Episode 2, titled The Well. What did you think of this episode?
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty... It was definitely a departure from last week's angst-o-rama and violence-o-rama, but it introduced, I think, a slew of new appealing characters. It finally... Well, not finally, but it brought more nuance to like the morgalizing and the differences of philosophies that that Carol and Morgan have, and introduce some interesting new dynamics between those new groups and our old established characters. So, what's not to like?
Yeah, I roughly feel the same. I thought it was pretty good. I did like seeing some new people introduced, a new place introduced. It's kind of, in some ways, a rehash of things like Woodbury or things like the prison, or even Alexandria when we first meet it. But I think there's a different enough spin in that Ezekiel seems to be a little more aware of how to keep this place together.
Yeah, like... It's nice to see a Woodbury with more of a benign leadership. Like, your alarm bells go off because the guy seems like he's a nutter.
Right.
But then by the end of the episode, he definitely, I think you said self-aware. That's a good term to use. Like, he's just as surprised as anybody that this is working, but it is working for this particular community and this particular group, and it's holding them together. And providing, this Arthurian legend construct is providing them with some kind of, what would you call it? Civil structure that otherwise could have something going down the Negan path or the Governor path or even the Rick Grimes crazy gun farmer path. Like,
right.
It's a different way to organize a society, and it doesn't feel particularly realistic, but it's The Walking Dead, so
right.
It's a kind of a breath of fresh air, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and also the way he's dealing with the outside forces, right? I mean, he's not trying to directly defy Negan, which you can imagine Rick doing. He's not going out and trying to swallow up the world and kill everything that doesn't fall in line with him, much like the Governor was. Like, he seems to have a straighter head on his shoulders as to what it takes to get by here, and I think that's servicing his community well.
Right. But yeah, there's obviously there's a couple of things that are eye-rolling. I think a lot of it is intentional.
Okay.
Like the fact that everywhere you've got King Ezekiel's sayings inscribed on walls, and like the choir playing Bob Dylan music. Like that stuff is kind of like, oh Jesus. But I mean, it kind of feels like a cult. It had a lot of feeling like it's got a charismatic, creepy hippie leader who's got a bunch. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where he's got multiple wives or whatnot, but I mean, maybe that's on a meta level some kind of unrealistic thing, that you'd have this guy who's got so much personal power and charisma, and he's been doing this for at least a year. We know that because of Benjamin's talk about his father and when that happened.
Right.
So he's been doing this for a year or two, and he's got this tiger, and he's not lording the power over people. I mean, is he the lone example or counterexample of absolute power corrupts absolutely?
He might be, yeah.
It is.
Then again, he doesn't have absolute power, does he? I mean, he's forced to negotiate with Negan's group.
But does that feel like a fairly recent thing?
I don't know why. I guess why would you say
so?
That?
You know how I don't like conspiracy theories, and this is essentially a government cover-ups conspiracy theory.
Oh yeah,
that requires everybody from the newest appointed knight up to the most trusted stalwart Richard type to keep the secret of what they're doing from the larger community for reasons that Ezekiel expounded upon this episode. So, like, if this has been going on for over a year, it seems like this would have leaked out.
Yeah, I don't know how you keep such a tight leash on the loyalty of your people.
Right.
And a secret like this.
I don't think it's possible.
Right.
Especially when you've got to think on That's the other thing is like, to what extent has everyone bought into this King Ezekiel business? Like, there's got to be a lot of people like Morgan. It's like, this is crazy, but it's working, so whatever. I'm gonna.
Right.
The guy's got a tiger, and he's doing all right for the people.
Put Carl in this situation. Bring Carl into this community and see how much he buys Ezekiel's
or
act.
Rick.
Sure. But I'm like specifically like Enid or Carl. Like the teenagers aren't going to go along with this bullshit. Oh, you're King Ezekiel, huh? Whatever, man.
I mean, even Carol, if Carol was on both good feet, she would have probably been like, fuck this shit. Someone give me a bottle rocket. I'm going to blow this whole thing up.
Right. As it was, I really liked the reactions from Carol and Morgan.
It was both pretty great.
There's this moment where it's just like, look, I'm going to take you in here and you're going to see some shit.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it, but
here
we go. And then Carol sees it and she just cracks up. Like she doesn't even know how to process.
Right.
It's good though.
So should we get into the recap then?
Sure.
Okay. So we missed this first part on our live watch last night. That's one of the premium features you get for joining up for a Club Bald Move. We had a whole bunch of we just moved to a new studio. If you've just joining us since last year, and we had some weird audio video setup issues that kind of made us a couple minutes late getting the live watch going. But we missed some world-class zombie kills. We see that Carol is on a wagon that's hitched up to, I'm going to call these guys knights, that Morgan is marking their way back because he clearly fully doesn't trust these people. There's a sudden walker attack. We see a horse that's being eaten. Carol's hallucinating these zombies as real people as they're being killed. She decides to take off and finds a gated house where she sees an old woman beckoning her inside, which turns out to be a zombie. A zombie gets her face chopped off with an axe, which was sweet.
Yeah, that's easily zombie kill of the week.
As the knights of the kingdom ride in and save the day, and there's just a lot of fucked up and cool like partial beheadings, total beheadings. And then Morgan marks the mailbox and raises the flag of this little gated house, and we'll return to that by the end of the episode. And then we see Carol wake up in recovery room with Morgan watching over her, and she's introduced to the massive operation that is the kingdom. It's got schools, it's got gardens, it's got a King Ezekiel, he's got a tiger. What'd you think of this introduction of the kingdom and the tiger and Ezekiel and Jerry? We need to talk about Jerry too.
Sure. I actually thought it was about as good of an introduction as you can do with a crazy guy with a tiger. It is absurd. On the face of it, it's absurd, and Carol's reaction is perfect. This is all absurd. I don't know if I'm hallucinating here, but if I am, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I know she's playing an act, too.
Sure.
She's, playing the sweet, innocent, motherly type, but
it's a struggle.
On.
She's really hard. She's really trying to hold this Real Housewives of Alexandria mode.
Yeah.
It's more of a struggle than she's ever had to do before because she just wants to call bullshit from the jump.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is the tension here between, keeping the audience invested and having the audience do the exact same thing.
Right. And I like when The Walking Dead, I mean, sometimes they swerve. They've got the governor and they decide to choke up on the bat a little bit and give you David Morrissey. And he's the governor, but not really. And then sometimes they just lean into it. Like Michonne is a fucking ninja woman with dreadlocks and chained up zombies. Fucking deal with it.
Yeah.
Abraham is a G.I. Joe action figure with a babe wearing skin-tight shorts and the biggest dork you've ever seen that's going to save the world. King Ezekiel has a fucking cat. It's right out of the comic books, and I think it's awesome. And I feel like it's frustrating for me as a comics first fan that they don't do that more often. Just trust that the material, the people have gone along with the Ninja Girl, they've gone along with the G.I. Joe action figure. They are going to go. Negan is another prime example. They'll go with that fantastic stuff if you just execute.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong, and it's a little. it's a little over the top, but I feel like a lot of the times that's what this show needs. It needs to try to stop grounding itself so much.
This show cannot be middle of the road, lukewarm vanilla pudding.
Right.
It's got to have a strong flavor.
And it has such an odd theme, such a fantastical theme that it's probably not going to be the high drama you want either, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's not really what The Walking Dead is.
That's always what I'm hoping that it'll get to, but sure.
I know.
Sure.
And a while back, I just gave up on that, and now I'm enjoying the fucking tiger guy and and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, it gives me like I'm looking for signs that this is going to crack, and they're going to mess up this kind of Negan and Kingdom arc. But so far, so good. I'm slightly worried that they went with a singular focus POV. Right. I grant that it would be much harder to introduce this character and have the silly, Jerry moments juxtaposed with Rick and, the rest of Maggie's genuine grief. Like, that would be a hard tone to balance. Right. But going forward, I don't think that we can. I don't know how you feel, but I feel like The Walking Dead doesn't have the luxury to spend 3 episodes in the Kingdom and then get back to Alexandria and just keep juggling those.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm a little worried about that, too, because of how many groups we have now. I mean, some of them are singular, right? Like Daryl.
Sure.
Well, Daryl's been taken, so Daryl's not getting any screen time with anybody else, and they can't really do a bottle episode with him.
Right. They can try.
Yeah, it's going to be Negan and Daryl.
Right.
Then they've got Maggie and Sasha as a group. Then they got Rick and his group. Now they got Tara and Gabriel and Enid and the baby. And then they've got the Kingdom. There's so many groups, and if they want to spend time on all of them, they're going to have to do episodes where they're blended.
Well, you threw in Tara and Gabriel, but really Tara and Heath are still off. So there's yet another group.
Right.
Like,
I was counting Alexandria together, but you're right.
You got to learn to master the ABC plot storytelling, or you're going to have more of the, kind of the same frustrations that we've had in seasons past.
Yeah.
So,
but I do think, for in as much as this was an episode from a singular POV of these two characters, it worked for me, and it was just so. I don't know if this is coming back off a 6-month hiatus on The Walking Dead, but it was just enough of the moralizing stuff for me not to get all in a fuss about it.
Right.
It felt like it came to some concrete resolutions there.
Yes.
These characters aren't so much struggling with where they stand anymore, as opposed to now this is who I am.
And what do I do
especially
with
Morgan himself.
And also the fact that he's I think he's realized some of the mistakes he's made and the effects that it's had and the negative effects, and he's trying to roll that back into his equation and struggle. Like, honestly, if I like consistent narrative storytelling, it would be I think it would be a mistake to just completely pretend like the moralizing and the Carolizing never happened.
I know.
Analysis, it's paralysis by paralysis. So I think they need to touch on it and show how these characters move on, and I mean, essentially just learn from the mistakes they've already made. Like, a little bit goes a long way. Have this thing springboard into a new direction for the characters and see where it goes. What do you think about the CGI for the tiger, Shiva?
It was good. Like, it was real good.
I was grading on a curve last night because, as you know, when we're watching on the live watch, it's not exactly a pristine HD feed.
Right.
But when I got home and saw the high definition copy, I thought that the tiger held together really well.
Yeah.
So pretty top notch tiger CG.
Yeah, it seems like. So I know in the past we have given The Walking Dead, specifically AMC as a production company, a lot of shit for cutting the budget on this show and trying to kind of shoestring this whole thing.
Right.
I don't know that they're doing that anymore. Like, the deeper we get into this show, the more it feels like they're spending on actors, on effects.
Well, we'll see if we get a Daryl bottle episode, because we've noted even these first 2 episodes have spared no budget that I can tell. There's lots of zombies, lots of practical effects, lots of eyeballs popping out, lots of faces getting cut off, lots of CGI tiger.
And there wasn't any cuts that felt glaring in the face of the plot. Right.
We'll see going forward whether we get a couple episodes where they spend $0 to kind of make it up. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice if they're like, hey, you know what? This show is making a ton of money. Maybe the audience is softening up a bit. We really need to start swinging for the fences if we don't want this to milk the cash cow
they
dry.
can afford it.
They
can
afford it.
Between the marketing on this, or the merchandising on this thing, and the advertising they're selling on the show itself. It's the biggest thing on TV.
This
Don't
show
tell me
prints
you can't afford
money
this.
for AMC.
Right. And I think they're loosening the purse strings a little bit there.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
That would be nice. What do you think of Jerry?
So I'm inclined to like him because he's on *Halt and Catch Fire* as Yo-Yo.
Okay.
This guy Cooper Andrews, I don't know how I feel about him yet. He's kind of a silly guy.
Yeah. He's like, chill it up, S. When Shiva's causing a bunch of ruckus, he gives a plate of Carol and introduces it as it's fruit time. Like he's, I mean, to me, he worked a lot better than like Eugene's character's introduction.
Right.
Like we eventually warmed to Eugene because he was so ridiculous, but this guy started off so ridiculous, and the fact that like it annoys Ezekiel somehow makes it okay. Like Ezekiel's like, "Damn it, Jerry! Damn it! Can't you
I get the feeling that this is the only thing Jerry was good for.
Well,
right? Like he had fucked up some other stuff just for being either he was just too silly for the job or he didn't take his responsibilities seriously enough.
But here's the thing. I'm pretty sure Jerry's the dude that lopped off that zombie's face with the axe. I think he's like a legit part of their war party, too.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And he says you're like a you're, I forget what he calls him,
right.
like a faithful steward. But I noticed in the second watch, like, oh, shit, I think Jerry's kind of a badass, too. And maybe that's why he gets to be silly.
All right. I thought maybe Ezekiel wanted a short leash on him, but maybe I'm wrong.
But
he is silly.
And also,
this guy has an interesting story. This actor too, because
seriously,
he has worked his way over the past few years from boom operator, holding a fucking boom onto the main screen for a lot of shows that you've probably seen and know. Hawaii Five-0, *Halt and Catch Fire*, now *Walking Dead*. He's gotten into the serious acting game.
He is moving it on up. Yeah, who's the guy that plays King Ezekiel? Carrie Payton. Carrie Payton, right?
Okay, yeah.
I was looking some info up about this, and one of my son's favorite shows is Teen Titans. This guy's the voice of Cyborg on Teen Titans.
Okay.
Who's very much a bombastic kind of guy. Didn't get a lot of that. Like, I actually was really surprised at how much kind of gravitas he had playing a fundamentally silly character who then kind of showed a lot of depth in his conversations with Carol.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
we see a lot of like writing on the wall as
I made a note of all of his sayings that I could find. I didn't get the choir one. It's something about life should be lyrical, but I couldn't see the entire quote. They didn't spin it around. But there's the one, drink from the well, replenish the wells, is seen prominently, and then he spouts it himself.
Right
before Jerry announces it's fruit time. And they do have a crazy fruit selection.
Yeah.
Like they're growing strawberries and apples and pomegranates.
Why pomegranates? It seems like...
Well, so you didn't get any of these takes in the feedback? Because it turns out like it looks like they were going for some hidden meaning with these fruits. Like Carol picking the apple from the tree is very biblical. I don't think I need to explain this to a Judeo-Christian audience. If not, just read like the first 2 chapters of the Bible. That's your homework assignment. Change your life. But the pomegranate is got a lot of symbology for the fruit of the dead in Greek mythology.
Okay.
Like, that's how Hades seduced his wife and kept her in his underworld. He tricked her into eating 6 pomegranate seeds, which kept her there 6 months out of the year, which is how the Greek explained that their growing cycle. Mm-hmm. That when she would go down to the underworld, her mother, who controlled all the crops, would mourn, and then nothing would grow, and then she'd come back for 6 months to return by her mother's side, and then shit would grow again, and there you go. But now it's interesting because the Greeks called it the fruit of the dead, which is just kind of a funny thing that King Ezekiel would be growing that in the Walking Dead universe. But I mean, and I know that the Greeks didn't necessarily view Hades as a sinister figure, but the fact that if you see him as offering this pomegranate to Carol to try to keep her. Mm-hmm. That does feel somewhat that analogy does feel kind of sinister.
Okay.
But since most of the viewing audience is going to go completely over their head, I don't know. It could just be something they're doing for fun.
Yeah, I don't know. I I guess I don't see how specifically like the apple stuff applies to Carol either. Like, I mean, that was that was all about gaining knowledge.
Adam and Eve, to eat the fruit of
sinning against God. Like
right. It could be that she's awakening to like because you start her in the beginning of the episode, she's hallucinating and she's getting like, her themes from last season were the fact that she's tired of all this killing, and she's even starting to be, I don't know, going soft on zombies or seeing the humanity in them. And then by the end of the episode, she clearly sees the old woman in the house for what she is, like that maybe she ate of the truth, and she's had a refinement to her life philosophy. She's woken up from the damage the morgalizing did to her. I don't know. Okay. But I feel like they are trying to kind of suggest some of that stuff with and again, this is all subsurface stuff that you don't even have to fully appreciate. She could just be stealing fruit like in a Huckleberry Finn type caper. She's going to tie it up in a little hobo sack and then bomb down the road. So anyway, that's the introduction of Ezekiel.
He says something that I had never heard before. When he's talking to Jerry, he says, "Your words leave me pitch kettled."
Yeah.
Did you know what that saying was?
I looked it up, and as far as I could see, is a pitch kettle is a kettle that carries pitch, which is this boiling hot tar substance that they'd use to like waterproof ships and whatnot. I don't know if that's a phrase that I'm not familiar with.
So I think it is. Like I looked up the term pitch kettled as like a single word, and I guess it's a thing that the English say or have said in the past, which essentially means that someone is utterly puzzled, confused, or nonplussed.
Huh.
So
is etymology like you stepped in a kettle of pitch and it stuck to you, and you're like, oh shit, now what? Like,
I don't know.
I've been pitch kettled.
I wish I knew.
All right. Well, you got further than I did. Yeah. So Carol gets out from the audience, barely with her suspension of disbelief intact, and she says, "You're shitting me." And Morgan tries to make a defense. She goes, "No, shut up. This is make-believe. It's playtime. I can't stay here." He says, "I can't let you go." She says, "It's not up to you." He says, "I don't have the secret of life, and I know what I've started, but I won't let you die out there." And it's threatening to turn into a Meatloaf duet. And Carol just says, "Yeah, try to stop me." And spoiler alert, he's bad at stopping her. But I don't know. Like to me, I was starting to side eye the episode a bit. Like, oh boy, if the whole episode is going to be dueling points of view like this, I don't know if I can take it. But this is pretty much one of the two major speeches about this, and I find it tolerable.
Okay.
So then Morgan accompanies the Kingdom Knights on what we are going to come to understand is a pig run, where they essentially herd pigs into these abandoned buildings where they've staged walkers, because it turns out pigs love walkers. A walker ain't nothing but a mobile trough to a pig.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I would like to see, like, do the walkers try to bite the pigs and the pigs just with brute force win? Like, pigs like, I don't give a shit if you're going to bite me. I want to bite you. We'll see who gets eaten faster, motherfucker. Like, because it looks like that they just, the zombies have no response to the pig threat. Like, granted, one of the zombies was tied up and he couldn't do much about it, but the other zombie, like, looked like he just got knocked the fuck down and pigs were feeding on him and he's still alive. Yeah. Couldn't do nothing to stop it.
No, I guess, you got 500-pound animals sticking their snouts all over you. I doubt there's much you can't do.
I mean, are we going to see a scene where Negan and, like, the governor backs up, like, a couple truckloads of zombies onto the battlefield, and the Kingdomites backload a couple of livestock trucks full of pigs, and it's like something out of Braveheart, just this vanguard of pigs, being driven towards the zombie horde?
Maybe.
I would like to see that.
I haven't seen any sign of pigs in the actual kingdom, though. It seems like all their pigs, they just do an occasional roundup. Yeah,
but we know that, like, so this guy who will come to appreciate his name is Richard, and he seems like he's one of the Lancelots of the round table or the circle theater. He is deliberately filling half of the pig's bellies full of walker meat. and then they're shipping them off to somewhere else, which we'll come to appreciate is actually the saviors.
Right.
But half of the pig allotment also goes back to the kingdom. So in as this plot kind of unfurls, the king orders Ben to dispatch a walker because they note that in the city the walkers are everywhere, and you make a slight sound and they come. Ben's a big fuck up. He can't. He goes to swing a machete at a walker at its head. He cleaves its shoulder. Doesn't even really cleave it. He just kind of gets it stuck there.
Yeah.
Later on, a walker ambushes him. He gets his fucking machete stuck in its scabbard, and Morgan has to broomstick the zombie to death. And Richard also instructs Morgan that no one needs to know about anything that happened here today, which is kind of almost mysterious to the point of like, I wanted Morgan to ask follow-ups, like, what the hell? Why? What's going on?
Right.
Why did you bring me? I'm a stranger. You've known me for like 2 days, and half of that I've spent by Carol's side. Like,
yeah, the revealing of secrets that happens during this episode, I don't buy that they're secrets at all. I at this point I can't buy it. Like, if you tell your secrets to every new person you meet, those people aren't invested. They'll tell other people.
Morgan's not even wearing armor. He hasn't even been accepted to the round table yet. Like, and you're letting him in. Like, that seems very like they're hoping that we don't notice as viewers that this is some very foreshortened storytelling here.
Because it's one step removed from the idea that he just tells everyone. Like, are we to believe that they're somehow special? That Carol and Morgan are special people? And that he decided to reveal this ultimate secret to them,
I mean, they're
as opposed
kind of
to everyone he meets?
I think they're doing some this character work where Morgan and Ezekiel have a conversation later on to understand is like just the last of many, where they're talking about Morgan's philosophy and that maybe King Ezekiel's taking a chance on Morgan because you know he's got a bunch of hot-headed knights that might explode at any time, and he wants Morgan there as a calming influence. Like, sure, I don't know, and I'm not. So where do you come down on it? Do you think that we need to see those conversations, or do you think that they've hinted enough that they've had them that you were able to go along with it?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, having a conversation and saying like, I think you could be useful to the group is one thing. Trusting someone with the secrets that could unravel your entire. The whole thing you've set up here,
right,
to two perfect strangers, and especially Carol. I mean, especially Carol, because as much as like Morgan has his philosophy, he doesn't know what Carol's philosophy is. He hasn't talked to her. Do
you think that King Ezekiel secretly wants people to find out about his plan? Because because he talks a lot about the burdens of secrets and. He can't do it, and he doesn't want any of his trusted knights to betray him, but bringing Morgan is a way to, like, essentially flip a coin. Like, if this guy sees the wisdom in my plan and keeping it secret, then that kind of validates it, and if he doesn't, then maybe I shouldn't have been holding this for myself anyway.
So he's, like, putting his own skills to the test. Like,
Kinda.
How well can I read these people?
Right.
Am I entrusting the correct people with these secrets? And if not, oh well.
Because a guy as self-aware as he is, as he's painted in this episode, you'd think he'd have some bit of doubt. Like, every time he gets dressed up in his King Ezekiel garb. And, like, he gives this benediction to the zombies. Where, like, you know, we might free you from the bondage of zombitude eventually, but until then, know that we are full, faithful, festive, free,
and alliterative as fuck.
Alliterative as fuck. Surely he's got some moments of self-doubt when he works himself, because he was just a zookeeper.
He's got to, yeah.
So,
and he's able to put on his community theater hat,
right,
in the moments where he needs to.
I thought it was a nice touch. I don't know, but it feels like they've arranged his dreads so that when the light hits them, and not even a particular way, because I noticed this throughout the episode, but it looks like he's got cat ears.
Yeah.
The way he's got the two dreads kind of tucked up and over, like it looks like he's wearing a cat costume a bit, which I think is intentional. Because I don't think he, I don't know, whatever. I just thought it was cute. So Ezekiel takes Morgan aside when they return to the kingdom and asked him to teach Ben the way of the staff.
Yeah, what the hell? Why has Ben so important?
Well, we'll find out later, and I got some.
We find out?
No, not exactly, but there's definitely some hints that you may have missed.
Okay.
We have another Ezekiel-ism. Pessimists look down and bump their head. Optimists look up and lose their footing, but the realist looks forward and adjusts his path accordingly. And he draws. He says that Morgan's a realist, and I kind of agree with that. And now that we've seen, like, he's not clinging to his Morgan ways. Mm-hmm. And if he did, Carol would have died.
Yeah, he's no longer. I mean, he's oscillated between both extremes, right? I mean, I would call him a pessimist when he was in his clear phase.
Sure. Yep.
I would call him an optimist when he was in his all life is precious phase.
Right.
Now he's returning to the norm, to the mean here, which I think makes him a stronger character.
Right. But he explains that Benjamin will be an important member of his court and that he needs him to live. So, official prediction, Benjamin going to die this season, right? There's no way this main character says it's super important for this guy to live, and he makes it out of this season of Walking Dead. There's no way.
Yeah, you're probably right.
That's a way to test King Ezekiel and see what he's made out of, I think.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Benjamin is made up for the show. So, like, that's not me having comic book knowledge. I haven't read this plot for 3 or 4 years, so I'm fuzzy on it anyway. But I'm just saying, I feel like when he said that, giant target painted on unfortunate Benjamin's back. Plus, he's a fucking idiot.
Sure, he seems pretty useless.
So,
although he knows he can repair a mean HVAC system.
Maybe he goes. Right? Maybe he'd go to take a wrench to it and just break it even worse.
Yeah.
So the next scene we have the choir singing Bob Dylan's "Don't Think Twice, It's All Right." I think the scene works despite the choir. I did not enjoy the choir. I thought the choir was distracting and kind of cringy.
Okay.
But on the other hand, I thought the file cabinet planters were super cool.
Those are cool, yeah.
I thought
vertical with his garden.
Carol wheeling around swiping supplies was super entertaining. Like, she takes a knife and then a beat later she grabs a chocolate.
Yep. Love it. That's perfect. I just don't eat her cookies. Don't do it.
No. Her going crazy, fake crazy over the breakfast cobbler and then getting all teary at the idea of a lunch cobbler just to steal a pair of jeans from this idiot was
How much cobbler
great.
do these people eat?
Cobbler at every meal?
Every single meal?
Yeah.
I don't need that
like,
much
even
cobbler.
if you could make cobbler every meal, like, maybe choke up on that a bit because then you make it more special.
Right. Make a pie instead of a cobbler. Like, make a bread pudding or something. Like,
yeah, parfaits, man.
Right. Cobbler at every meal. I get sick of it real fast.
Yeah, especially since they don't have ice cream to go with it.
Oh, yeah.
Ben wants to read Morgan's philosophy book because he's read everything in this here Kingdom twice, even the HVAC book, as you mentioned. I mean, they're just trying to kind of show that he is more of an intellectual than a fighter. Mm-hmm. So I got that message received.
Right.
Ezekiel then brings Morgan deeper into his pig secrets. He explains the Chronicles of the Pigs. He explains that these are the saviors collecting their due. He doesn't explain it. We see the saviors show up, and Morgan bristles. He knows who these fuckers are.
Right.
They count their 8 fat pigs. They have an anti-Jesus who is needlessly antagonistic, an antichrist, if you would, who attacks Richard, who's the stalwart first-in-command knight dude, and he gets his ass handed to him. Richard just takes this guy apart effortlessly. Ezekiel commands him to stop in the name of the king. Anti-Jesus takes a few free shots before the Negan representative de jour calls him off. He flips Richard off, and they're sternly reminded they need to produce, or Richard's going to be the first to go. Pretty standard savior recruitment enforcement tactics, wouldn't you say?
So,
plus, these fucking guys. Like, every season, The Walking Dead trots out some straw man for me to hate. Last year, ridiculous. This year, it's Antichrist.
Yeah.
This guy...
What's this guy's real name?
He's AC, and he fucking needs to go. He needs to go and go gloriously. And I want by Richard's hands if there's any justice in the world, which this is The Walking Dead. Of course there's not.
Yeah. I was a bit confused by the free shots idea. Like, okay, I get it. Don't give the guy a wedgie and make him eat his own boogers or something. But you can dodge the punches, man.
I think
dodge the punches and shoulder check this fool because he's...
Yeah, I felt like they made this more plain than it is. What I think happened was that you're supposed to understand that Ezekiel's order that we don't react this way is so strong and his men respects him so much that he was going to sit there and take the shot and do nothing to stop it. And also it's a way for Richard to be like, fuck you to the Antichrist guy. But I feel like they needed to have Ezekiel be more stronger about don't raise a hand to these people and do some King Ezekiel wordy shit.
Yeah, there was some very small disconnect for me there.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
Okay,
it's more like what is the cause and effect? And like for example, because what I guess the situation played out, but the Savior saying, "Oh, free shots." Like why did you think that was going to work?
Yeah.
Like, I needed something from King Ezekiel to build that line up. Maybe got lost in editing. But, yeah, I get that. That's weird. The Saviors take off, and Morgan says, is that why you wanted me here? Because he knows that Morgan has killed Saviors before. Because I could do it again if I had to. And King Ezekiel enigmatically responds, no, quite the opposite. And if I were Morgan, I'd say, wait, because I couldn't do it again if I didn't have to? What the fuck does that mean?
I think it means he wouldn't do it unless he had to in this context. But you're right. It's not exactly the opposite.
He needed this cooler head because if everybody was Richards and Ben's, they'd be screwed because Richard would all attack and Ben couldn't back it up, and then lots of people die.
There's also... So I like what they're doing here with this. I don't know how I feel about it being a secret from his people, but this idea that they're taking these hogs out and slaughtering them outside the city and giving them to Negan's men outside the city, that has the added benefit of hiding their true prosperity from Negan, which I think is part of what they're doing. They seem very prosperous for a town that is forced to give 50% of its harvest or its good.
If they showed up to the
Negan.
gates of the city, so they're using this as an excuse,
right? Like, oh well, they want 8 pigs. They don't know we have 178 pigs in our thing.
I like that theory, but here's the thing: I don't, and we haven't talked about it yet. Is when they drove the pigs into the thing.
Yeah,
that's kind of the day of the collection, is the way I understood it. And Richard looks at King Ezekiel and said, "This is just what we needed."
Yeah,
like. Implying that maybe they went right to the deadline before they found these pigs that could placate the Saviors, and there is kind of like a last-ditch thing. Maybe the pigs are running thin. I don't know, but there's something about the cobbler every day, cobbler 3 times a day, a plenty versus that statement he made to King Ezekiel that I think it's supposed to be a mystery that we're supposed to kind of like, and file away for later, but there's something more to it.
Okay. So maybe they're not as prosperous as they seem.
Or maybe, I don't know, the strain of keeping this secret from the people and keeping it secret from the Saviors is like, like they don't want to give okay, well, we're a pig short, so let's give them a bushel full of pomegranates. Oh, shit, then the Saviors know we have pomegranates. And then how long's it been since they showed up to the kingdom to actually look around and be like, oh, shit, you guys got tomatoes and cobbler?
Right. We want some of those, too.
Yeah, cobbler 3 times a day. We want 2/3 of those cobblers.
Pomegranate cobbler.
Pomegranate cobbler. That has to be the most time-consuming cobbler in the world. Because, that's the thing. Like, I like pomegranates, but fuck pomegranates.
Yeah.
They are, by far, the reward versus effort to get their goodness out. It's like, until nature evolves a combination lock for fruit, pomegranates will reign supreme. I just don't... Someone else wants to do it, I'll happily eat a whole bowl full of seeds. But until then, no. So Ben has a little brother, I think, is what we're supposed to understand from this next scene where he's making him clean his plate so he can go to movie night.
Dutch? Is his name actually Dutch, or is he calling that as a nickname?
It beats the shit out of me, man.
Okay.
My grandfather's nickname was Butch, and I don't know why.
All right.
I asked one of my great uncles once, is like, because he looked like a butcher's boy. I'm like, what the fuck does a butcher's boy look like?
Yeah. Was
that like a comic book superhero, the butcher boy?
I don't know.
So was he chubby? My grandfather was rail thin as far as his whole life, as far as I could tell. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. So he's Dutch. Maybe he looked like a young Arnold Schwarzenegger or the Predator movie.
Was it Ronald Reagan who had the nickname Dutch?
Is he Dutch? I think you're right. He was.
I think so, yeah.
His kid looks like Reagan.
Yeah.
There's also another King Ezekiel-ism on the back wall. The dead are alive, lest not the alive be dead.
The fuck does that mean?
I think it means that like we should be full, faithful, festive, and fucking all the time because you could be dead on the outside, and that would be not a good thing. We find out that King Ezekiel is very close to Ben's father, who was a good fighter. A year ago, he got killed with 8 others clearing out a building, and Ezekiel has been gun-shy about his people's lives ever since, and which explains why he's had this pacifist and appeasement policy towards the saviors. He doesn't want to rock that boat and get the people all riled up. He also observes that Morgan is a vegetarian and has a prescription against killing in his little philosophy book. And Morgan's like, whoa, I don't want to start a whole season of this shit with you, so find your own path, kid.
Right.
I'm just fumbling through. So congratulations, Morgan. You can be taught.
I couldn't help but notice how much this Ben guy looks like Joey from the Hackers movie.
You couldn't get over that last night.
Oh, my God. He looks so much like him. And it's not him, obviously. He'd be 25 years older. But, yeah. Does that guy have a younger brother?
I don't know.
His name
Maybe it's
Jesse
a son.
Bradford
if it's 25 years, it could be some hacker spawn.
Oh, man.
They're breeding now. Watch out. The one thing I want to... There's a hot theory I saw on Reddit that maybe this guy's... Knowing what we know about Negan and how he did... he took off Rick's arguably his best fighter hostage and took him off to join the Savior squad... Is it possible that Benjamin's father actually is a savior now? And that the reason King Ezekiel is so intent on making Ben a part of his court and that he survives is because... I mean, the plain reading is he just wants to honor his father's sacrifice and make sure his son lives a full and happy life. But also there could be this almost King Arthurian aspect where he's trying to... make up for the fact that his father fell to the dark side, quote unquote, by making him a part of his kingdom, the inner circle of his kingdom.
Could be. Yeah, I don't know why he's so important. I mean, those are all plausible, I suppose.
And I wonder if there's like a whole bunch of other guys, like badasses under duress within Negan's compound, if they're going to somehow be some kind of nucleus of rebellion. Like, Daryl's going to go in there preaching that, and then you'll find out that Benjamin's dad is on the inside, and, like, he's still got misgivings about it. I mean, I don't know.
That could be. That's interesting.
Because they certainly look like they're going to be exploring in the weeks to come Daryl and, like, this battle for his soul, and Negan's going to try to co-opt him and break him, and, like...
Yeah.
I don't know, but I thought that was kind of interesting. No real evidence for it, but... I thought it was intriguing.
So I guess Morgan is just a vegetarian now. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if he was before this with his all life is sacred stuff, but
clearly not.
How does that work in the zombie apocalypse?
Vegan because he's all about the cheese and the
right. Just vegetarian. He's not.
What do you mean? How does that work?
I mean, it's not exactly like you can pick and choose your food here in the zombie apocalypse. Now, I imagine you could probably survive, but to thrive as a vegetarian in the zombie apocalypse,
the woods, like, and you got like bitter greens and a possum, as Carol put it, you got to eat the possum, right? You can't just survive on
protein.
Yeah,
and sure, say what you want about a modern vegetarian and even vegan diet, you can get enough protein, but you have to be very picky about what you eat,
right?
That's
I don't know if fresh legumes are just on the offing in zombie apocalypse.
I don't know.
That could be my unrepentant carnivore propaganda, but I kind of agree with you. That I mean, I guess if in the kingdom where there's enough cobbler and fruit to go around, then knock yourself out.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
And it might be a recent development. It might just be because now he's got a bounty before him, and he can be picky.
And he just killed that savior. He's not sure how he feels about it, so he's trying to hedge his bets by not killing cows or pigs.
Maybe.
I don't know. He's just a big fan of Babe. And, can't bring himself to eat pigs.
It was the only VHS tape they had in that house with his son. It was his favorite movie.
And Babe 2, Pig in the City.
Well, yeah.
That'll change your eating habits.
Roger Ebert's favorite movie, apparently.
It's a good movie, Jim. It's good. You should quit prejudging kids' movies. See one every once in a while.
All right.
So Morgan goes to check up on Carol, and she's gone, and he smiles the smile of Ben Affleck when he went to go pick up Good Will Hunting, and he wasn't there. Which is weird based on their previous conversation where he's like, I'm not going to let you leave. I'm not going to let you die. He's like, oh, you finally left. Oh, don't have to worry about that anymore. Not like I was super worried about it.
I thought it was like more like, yep, she outsmarted me just like she said she was going to.
Okay.
Carol, she's wily. But what? Maybe this is my Walking Dead brain kicking in and my disbelief and misunderstanding of the fundamental day and night cycle in this world, but what time would you say it is when he finds Carol's gone?
Middle of the afternoon.
At the latest,
At the
right?
latest.
What time would you say it is when they find her picking fruit in the yard?
Pitch fucking dark.
Okay. I thought it was my imagination, but I don't think they're playing us straight with the timeline
Ezekiel
here.
said, the day-night cycle has got me pitch kettled.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why they do this, because they wanted, obviously, Ezekiel to dramatically light the brazier and confront her, and
Right.
that's all cool. But like maybe have some long shadows going along the wall when Morgan comes home.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I mean, because it's also they're having dinner. Okay, I think the lighting is just they just don't give a shit about the light, because you're supposed to, I mean, dinner is not 3:00 in the afternoon.
Right.
It's probably late in the day. They're talking about we're about to go see a movie, so maybe it's a lot later than we're giving it credit for. But damn,
Yeah.
they didn't shoot it that way.
Maybe it's 6 and, Carol's out there at 7
yeah.
and the sun has gone down, but it doesn't look like it.
Let's see here. So Carol's in the Garden of the Kingdom. She's stealing apples as the Eve figure that she is. Ezekiel finds her and orders Jerry to leave us, who informs them they'll be in hollering range, and then chucks deuces. Ezekiel says you should never bullshit a bullshitter, and then he explains his philosophy that he was a zookeeper and he happened to exploit this animal's pre-existing relationship, and then he healed her, and which made them bros for life, or whatever the female tiger equivalent of that, huntresses for life. And
I think it's a life debt. I didn't know cats had that. But
you're right. You made a lot of choice Chewbacca jokes. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah,
she's gonna forever pilot the Millennium Falcon by his side. But people see a dude leading a tiger around by a chain and make some assumptions about him, and there's some tall tales, some Paul Bunyaning is happening, and he embraced that because he found that it kept people safe, which kept them productive and happy. And
this cat is the smartest cat that's ever existed, because not only does it understand the concept of a life debt,
sure,
but he makes the point, like, if this thing could rip my arm off, this thing could rip the chain right out of my hand and go rampaging.
Sure.
Why hasn't it done that to the townspeople? Like, the cat must understand the concept of a societal structure as well.
I mean, so I feel like that rule number 1 is you keep the tiger fed. It eats as much as 10 men, and you keep the tiger fed. Rule number 2 is
maybe he meant it eats up to 10 men a day.
Yeah, no, they did seem to have no shortage of people.
It's true.
I don't know. Like, I guess
if it ever did get loose, it would fuck shit up in that town.
Or if they ran low on pigs, like this could be like just what they need, not just to keep Negan. They're more worried about the tiger.
It might be.
Like, Negan's a couple miles away. His retribution is theoretical. This tiger wakes up with a hungry belly, and it's going to be a horror show.
Yep.
You think the dead's bad?
That's why he keeps Jerry around. He's a big guy.
There you go.
Satiate the tiger's appetite.
Rations. I want you staying close to me, Jerry, because you're my trusted advisor, even though you fuck up my Macbeth shit all the time.
Right.
I think you cracked a coach. He's emergent in case of starvation. Break Jerry. He talks about he used to act in community theater as his side job as a zookeeper, and that he pulled on leadership roles such as King Arthur and Macbeth and Martin Luther. Is he talking about the real Martin Luther or Martin Luther King Jr.? I assume the latter in the live watch, but he usually, when people talk about MLK, they say Martin Luther King, usually with the junior. When he says Martin Luther, I mean, I guess I know why that wouldn't fly. No one's going to listen to some dude in a hair shirt. But
okay,
nailing biblical proclamations on the doors. But because my thought last night is like, so you got Martin Luther King, Arthur, and Macbeth as role models for leaders that you could portray to people, and you choose King Arthur? Really?
Right.
Really?
Okay. Out there.
And he says, but my name is Ezekiel. That's the one thing about it that's legit. And I thought Carol, like, I was ready for Carol to be like, oh, okay. But she's like, I don't care.
Yep.
You do what you want. This is Looney Tunes. I'm out. Which I thought was pretty awesome.
I did too.
But I tell you what, by the end of Ezekiel, because he doesn't stop there, he goes, look, all this, I want you to impress upon you that life doesn't have to be bad. There's still hope, heroism, grace, and love. And yes, maybe I deal with the bad by going overboard with the good. Mm-hmm. But
embrace the contradiction.
Yeah. And she says, why are you doing this? Because doing, it makes me feel good. And he also says maybe you can go but not go, which is kind of crazy, but I think he's hinting at letting her settle in the outskirts of town. That seems like what's happening here. Mm-hmm. Because that's how we round out the episode. Morgan rides out with Carol to the fenced-in graveyard house we saw in the beginning. They make up because she regrets all the times she tried to kill and stab him, and he says that you're my favorite person, or at least top 5 or top 3 of people I've knocked out. Again, Carol seeing a world of clear eyes by killing the walker and burying her, having herself a fire, but then there's a knock at the door, and fucking Hades shows up with the pomegranate wanting to capture Persephone again, and she's actually warming up to him. She smiles in the epised. Whether she eats the 6 seeds and we plunge the world into 6 months of winter during the production week, can you believe The Walking Dead ended with another cliffhanger? Is she going to eat the pomegranate or not?
No, she's going to smack that pomegranate out of his hand.
What's the hashtag they were circling on Talking Dead?
Move 2 more blocks down the street.
Hashtag will she eat it?
Right. Hashtag I don't know.
Hashtag pomegranates, really?
Hashtag too many secrets. Like
hashtag cobbler gobbler.
Jerry's the cobbler gobbler. So there are a couple of different secrets that he's keeping here. Mm-hmm. One of which he lets Morgan in on, the other of which he lets Carol in on.
Sure.
Because Morgan doesn't know that he is more than, is a little more mundane and self-aware than the king.
Because Morgan's clearly kind of walking on eggshells around his sanity.
Right. And Carol doesn't know about their savior stuff. So I don't know how that's going to play out. Now, Carol is gone for now. She's out of the picture. So he doesn't have to worry about, pretending to be this king in front of her to all of his other subjects.
Right.
But that might come back eventually if Carol ever gets reunited with this group. And I guess Morgan and Carol are not going to talk about these secrets to each other or with each other. So maybe his secrets are safe. I don't know.
That's a big if they don't talk to each other, because it seems like this going and not going strategy is going to bring them into fairly close contact,
right,
on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I guess the question I have is, does Ezekiel have eyes for Carol? Because the one thing about the speech I left off was about the many times he mentioned about love and how that life finds a way, essentially, and he did seem to take a kind of shine to her. Or at least that's what I detected.
Yeah, it seemed like it.
Okay. I think Ezekiel, even though he's got the crazy King Arthur affect, big upgrade over Carhartt Man from last season.
Yeah, I don't even remember his name.
No.
That's how important.
That's like falling in love with a can of Spam.
Yeah.
And now you got Cobbler 3 times a day. I like King Ezekiel. I like him a lot.
I do too. I felt like that final scene between him and Carol, I guess not the final scene, the penultimate scene there, where he kind of tells her how he got his start here in the kingdom, and how all this came to be, was a really important moment for that character, because without that, he is just a caricature.
Right.
At this point, he feels like a human being who is just leaning into the things that people think about him.
Right.
The perception that people have of him. So when he's making his decisions from now on, I hope they understand this, they need to draw a distinction between what he actually thinks and what he does as this character he's created.
Right.
Like, I as an audience member want to see more of that. Like, the real man talking about why the character is making the decisions that he's making.
Right. The other thing is, and why I'm inclined to give him a bit of slack, is how many seasons have we been saying that everyone should be wearing some form of body armor?
Yeah.
And, like, if it's the crazy guy that finally makes that stick for some bullshit aesthetic reason, that's a plus on my, like, these guys, a zombie sneaks up and bites them on the shoulder, not a big deal because they're wearing shoulder pads. It happens to Sasha because she's got her fucking tank top on. It's a death sentence.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad to see some post-apocalyptic armor wearing. It's the fact that it's like some kind of post-apocalyptic knighthood makes it even better in my view. That's all I got for the episode. I got some more thoughts for the spoiler section, but I think it's time to turn it over to feedback. Hey, it's time to tell you how you can support Bald Move. It's easy. Go to club.baldmove.com, and for a low price, you can sign up and get a bunch of premium features, for example, ad-free feeds. Something you might be interested in is our first-run Bald Movies, where we try to take in a movie on Thursday night that's going to be released this Friday. This week, we're going to take in the premiere of Marvel's new comic book masterpiece.
That sounds promising.
Doctor Strange. So we have a free, spoiler-free review where we talk about the movie in general terms and what we thought about it and some of the trailers that we're excited about. And then for club members only, we have the no-holds-barred spoiler take where we get into the nitty-gritty. Traditionally, the comic book movies have been some of the more lively of those discussions. So if you're interested in the latest the movies, especially the Marvel franchise, you might want to check out the club. But there's also VIP sections of the forums, other premium content and video content that we do. Go to club.baldmove.com to get the full pitch. But yeah, we cannot do it without your support. We cannot do the amount of podcasting and the depth of the analysis and the frequency that we post without being able to do this full time. And we can't do that without your support of the club. So once again, club.baldmove.com.
All right, we'll start off with Mary Kay, who I just wanted to do a little bit of feedback from last episode. I cut the majority of it because I'm frankly tired of talking about who gets their head knocked in.
Hashtag head gobbler.
Hashtag Glenn debacle. Like, I don't want to talk about any of that anymore. So I made vicious cuts. But Mary Kay starts off with, you've talked about the dumpster fire near death of Glenn as a dramatic misstep in advance of his eventual head-beating comic book death, but I've been thinking about Glenn's story arc, and I think the dumpster near miss actually punctuates his final demise. This was a fairly nuanced take that I have not yet heard, so
okay.
I permitted it.
You allow it.
She continues, Glenn didn't survive the zombie apocalypse by being professionally trained like Rick or Abraham, or being a kick-ass like Daryl or Michonne. Glenn survived by being clever. He was quick, observant, and resourceful, the go-to guy for provision runs who always got out of a scrape. After the dumpster scene left us hanging, I thought Glenn would, of course, survive by hiding under the pile of zombies, because Glenn always figured a way out of peril. That isn't to ignore his evolution as a fighter and leader, but Glenn's wits and bravery were his defining characteristics. So the fact that his death was completely random is the exact opposite of that, something no amount of cleverness could avoid, and the worst of tragic ironies. Glenn managed to outfox a zombie pileup that would have killed any other character, but he couldn't outmaneuver a senseless bat to the head. I think it re-emphasized Glenn's nature in contrast with the ultimate outcome. What do you think about that take? This idea that because Glenn is who he was, that his death is some truly poignant sense of, gives you a sense of irony there.
Yeah, I don't know. Because like I've had experience in my favorite book series, the Patrick O'Brien. There was in the 20th book that Patrick O'Brien wrote before he died. One of the beloved characters dies in a very random kind of like hail of gunfire incident, and is passed without much remarking. And there's two arguments amongst the fandom. Number one, that's like mind blowing and realistic because that's how actually would happen. But then there's also people that are like, yeah, but we're also reading a fantasy,
right?
And when you kill a beloved character, you got to give him a couple paragraphs of a eulogy, or someone it's like some of the main characters should stop and be like, hell shit, this guy since book one has been by our sides and now he's dead. That's a bummer, right? So I don't know where I stand on the fact that you show this guy who just conquers everything with his wits and bravery, and then he dies from some kind of random chance, like a game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or not even eeny, just as a swift retribution for Daryl stepping out of line. I don't know. I don't know if that makes it better or worse.
Okay. I mean, the quintessential one I think of when I think of kind of out of the blue deaths is Deep Blue Sea?
Oh yeah,
Sam Jackson.
Sure.
Just getting chomped.
Giving a Sam Jackson speech, rallying the troops, and then nope.
Right.
Tiger sharked.
Pretty ironic there. But I don't know. I'm not sure that I completely buy that and that it makes all of that okay.
I will say that there's no way in hell the writing room was intending all that.
Right.
Like if someone had some kind of persuasive evidence that they intended to set all this up as some kind of existential point about the world, then I guess I would begrudgingly allow it. But some of this stuff feels a bit like after the fact rationalization, which is fine. But like I said, I don't know if it makes me feel differently about it.
Okay. Matt from ABQ says, wanted to clear up something I caught on my rewatch. The fog that we were talking about last episode, that was ultra foggy, was actually smoke. So Negan drove Rick back to the spot where they blocked the road with logs and hung the guy who was, quote-unquote, someone with a whole lot of someones who didn't listen in the season finale in the finale of Season 6. The Saviors lit the roadblock on fire after hanging the guy. Anyways, what I assumed was fog was actually all the hanging smoke from the massive log fire that was burning all night. Negan drove Rick back to that spot for a reason. He knew the fire would attract walkers. He also parked right under the hanging guy and threw the axe on the roof so Rick would have to see him face to face and be reminded yet again what happens to people that don't listen.
Does smoke work that way?
Just hangs in the air like that?
I mean
the whole pile might have been smoldering and just
burning wet leaves maybe, but there's wet logs. I don't know, because usually when stuff is burning, the heat, convection.
You're right. It all goes up.
It all goes up, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't act like a fucking fog machine, but I mean, either way, like
this show might take liberties with physics.
One thing
I'll say.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They might do that.
They might.
Yeah. A couple of corrections. So that was one of them. The other correction, which is a just absolute duh moment, Patrick W. and a bunch of other people wrote in to tell me that Morgan's wife was not at the table. It was actually Sasha sitting between Morgan and Abraham.
Oh, man.
But Sasha... So I was fooled because it's a profile shot. She's like half hidden behind Morgan. And her hair is entirely different. Like, instead of having it pulled back in the ponytail she usually has,
right,
it's all poofed out.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that looks like Morgan's wife. Nope. Totally wrong.
Like I said, I had no opinion because that didn't match up with my recollection, but I also wouldn't have swore that, on a stack of Bibles that she wasn't there because we were under some serious time constraints last week.
Yeah, that's on me. Joe M. It's Joe M, the ratings guy.
Joe M.
Wants to talk about the season premiere.
I'm actually curious about where it's at in relation to how it's been doing in other shows.
So he says the mishandling of last season's finale wasn't enough to keep people from watching the season premiere. In fact, quite the opposite. Walking Dead had its second highest rated episode ever.
Interesting.
A very, very close second to the season 5 premiere, No Sanctuary, The Escape from Terminus. Total viewership of 17 million was 20% higher than the finale last year.
Ooh.
To get 20% more viewers to come back is an impressive feat under any circumstance. To increase 20% after a finale that was, safe to say, not very well received by fans is remarkable. Walking Dead has steadily increased its viewership every year until last year, where it declined for the first time. Based on the numbers for the premiere, this trend looks to be reversing, which is extremely rare for a show that is entering its 7th season.
And just from inside Bald Move Ball, we noticed like a pretty massive spike in our expected traffic for last week's episode.
Right.
Now, sometimes we get that. Like, whenever there's a controversial episode, we notice a significant and fairly predictable uptick in our downloads because I feel like we've got this reputation as the assholes who shit on The Walking Dead. So when people want to seek out a controversial opinion, we're there to give it to them, and maybe we fucked up last week. But... if we were so calculating as to take all this into effect.
Right.
And I thought, like, well, maybe it's just that. It's like, because I was actually blown away by how controversial the episode was by our mailbag standards. But maybe it's just a spike that The Walking Dead, like, its boats floating a little bit higher in the water now.
Yeah, I think that was part of it. He also continues, and make fun of Talking Dead all you want for its content and pandering, but among the 18 to 49-year-old viewers that advertisers love, there's the number 2 rated non-football show on all of TV for the week.
Oh, and it costs nothing to make.
I don't give a shit. It could have 900 billion people watching it, and I don't care. It's not a good show. That would pique my interest. They'd have like intergalactic appeal
right. If it had 900 billion people watching it. But I don't know. I know why they do it, because a lot of people. This is why our podcast network works, because people they love something and they don't want the experience to be over. They want to prolong that experience and talk about that experience. And even if it's fairly superficial takes on things, I mean, that's one of the reasons our instant takes are so popular, because it's not particularly well informed. It's just two guys going, oh, shit, look, can you believe that? People love it because it allows them to prolong the good feelings they feel when they're watching their favorite show. And AMC loves it because it probably costs $100,000 to make, and they pull in crazy money for it. So,
and then adding to that, Matt L writes in and wonders if this might be all the proof they need to continue with this sort of trend they've got of these cliffhangers. What do we think about that? Is this going to, this spike going to encourage them?
It ain't going to discourage them, that's for fucking sure. And I don't know how much power the Gimple and Kirkman, and I guess Nicotero, throw them in there at that rate, at that level now too, have when they're fighting with the money guys. Mm-hmm. But whatever that balance of power, surely, and even if you grant that they have an interest in telling a more compelling form of their story, they had to. I mean, there's got to be a lot of executives being like, "See, guys, all your fucking nerds were all pissed, but they all came back when we rang the bell."
Yeah,
like. I mean, it's the same way like video game. You go to any video game forum during a pre-release of a video game, and everyone's like, remember, guys, we don't want to pre-order. We don't want to get fucked. Right. We don't want to support microtransactions. We don't. And then every fucking time it's record-breaking pre-orders and record-breaking stuff on microtransactions, because everyone has this fear of missing out. So until we as a people, us nerds, get a little bit more stiff in our spine about standing up to stuff like this and care more about it than bitching online, they're going to keep doing this to us.
Right. And on the meta level, it's weird being a podcaster.
Sure.
Because I'm actively, say what you want. I think The Walking Dead is an okay show. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a bad show. I don't think it's a great show. I think it's okay to good.
The gore and action elevate it to from its otherwise questionable dramatic underpinnings.
But by talking about this show, I'm generating buzz for the show.
Sure.
Regardless, whether I'm saying negative things or positive things about the show, it's being talked about, and that's all they really care about, is that people are. Even if people are tuning into their show exclusively to hear me rip it on a podcast, that doesn't matter to them. That's still an eyeball on their show. You are giving them money, essentially.
But there's definitely, and I think there's,
and I am too, and I'm a little bit torn by that sometimes. And if this show were worse, if this show were actually bad, I would probably stop podcasting about it just for that mere fact.
Or if the podcast was a bummer to do, but we tend to think it's funny and like doing it.
But even if it was kind of fun to do and the show was real bad, I would feel bad about directing people to the show or continuing in the buzz for the show, just keeping it in the limelight,
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I will say that I think that there are limits, and they can only go to this well so many times, and the executives can slap themselves on the back all they want, but this is ultimately a cannibalistic strategy. This is something that is slowly slitting, and maybe people will show up to see a person slit their own throat because you don't see that every day.
Right.
But just like the NFL, after a year, I mean, I'm doing a little poking around, and they're, for the first time in decades, showing some softening of their viewership because they've had a bunch of stuff that they have ignored, as far as head injuries and problems with the games, and the stuff is piling up, and people are not as interested in the product. And if you ignore those problems or even misinterpret like people being super fans of them accepting it, like people love something and they don't want to stop, and you continue to abuse them, then you can get in a cycle to where it's just this downward cycle that you can't get out of. And just as the NFL can't take it for granted, they're always going to be the biggest thing on Sunday. I think The Walking Dead has got that same lesson that like if they want to say that, oh well, fans say what they will, but they can still come back for the resolution, the dramatic resolution. I don't know, man. How many times can you do that? Yeah. Because the other way you can bring people back is just solid storytelling and characterization.
Right. It makes me wonder, like, how strong are like soap operas still going? Because they have that formula too, right?
Right.
Like, we're just going to give you twist after twist and cliffhanger after cliffhanger, and we're going to keep you coming back for the resolution.
That's a good question, because I've never really known a person that's into soap operas.
Right. I wonder
My
if
dad was a fan of wrestling, and that's the closest I can come to the same kind of phenomenon. Like, wrestling is masculine story, this soap opera.
Right. I don't know. I wonder if the demographics are just changing in those ways.
Could be.
Anyway, Mark to Hate, which I don't know if that's his real name or a name made up for The Walking Dead, but Mark to Hate says, just 2 thoughts on The Walking Dead Season 7 premiere. You both talked a lot about how you wanted this episode to be at the end of last season for more of an emotional impact. While I tend to agree about the emotional impact bit, I think I got to think if it was at the end of Season 6, there would be way more casual fans taking the gut punch as a reason to quit watching the show and never come back, right? So that's interesting because there was a lot of backlash on the violence and the gratuity of it all, or gratuitousness of it all. So do you think people would have had the clean break opportunity at the end of season 6?
Last week, every week I pick one podcast of ours to listen for quality control, and this end of last week I chose The Walking Dead because it's coming back and I want to see, okay, what's it like? And so I listened to the feedback just recently, and one point that we made was, and I think it's persuasive, is how many of these people saying that, because Walking Dead's always been a pretty dark, depressing, violent show, are saying that because they were looking for reasons to quit a show that they've already kind of emotionally and mentally checked out on.
Right.
Like are you looking, is this really a straw that broke the camel's back, or has the camel's back been broken and it needed to be mended and put in traction, and this was just a convenient way to be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm done. It's like it's like when you're in a relationship and it's been kind of bad. The thing that makes you break up with a person, is it the worst thing they ever done, or is it the thing that's just like, okay, well, this is something? Yeah. And there's also opposite from like, oh, I want to break up with this person, but their mother just got diagnosed with, fucking spinal disappropriation. I'm trying to come up with a fictional disease because I really don't want to make anybody think that I'm talking about
people's spines.
I know that's an affliction.
Not a diagnosis. That's a conviction. that's a crime.
But yet some people suffer with the condition silently. And then it's like, oh shit, well now I can't break up with, or it's like, oh, it's Christmas time. You can't break up someone at Christmas. So it's like there's all these ways we rationalize to stay in or get out of relationships, and I wonder how much of that calculus goes into this kind of hand-wringing and moralizing about the depravity of last week's Walking Dead.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I do think it provides less friction for people to just stop watching if it happens at the end of season 6.
Right.
And people are kind of disgusted, in however much as they might be.
But I don't know, because that was such a huge topic from just our fan base and also the Walking Dead fan base. It was hard to find a person that really defended it in good faith. Yes, there is some people that are writing a show off because it's so violent, but I think that we're onto something with that, kind of scapegoating the reason why you want to just quit watching The Walking Dead. You want to reclaim your Sunday night for something else.
Right.
Westworld, maybe.
Sure.
Because that's a real thing, trying to decide which show you're going to watch first, which show you're going to DVR. If you can just simplify that, I don't know. What do you think?
I think it makes it easier. I don't think that necessarily would have been the point that swayed a lot of people.
And there's also clearly genuine people that was a breaking point.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. Anyway, he also goes on. I can't exactly put my finger on it, but there's something that just doesn't feel right to me about this coming right after Rick and company just murdered like 30 of Negan's people in their sleep. He's talking about the deaths. I'm not saying the survivors should be less sad about Glenn and Abraham, but I don't know. It feels weird. Is it just me? I mean, is there anything to the idea that these people might have deserved the punishment they got? I think that's kind of what he's getting at here.
I do think that's
in some
ways.
These
are things that you're actually. This is why I think this is such an interesting era of The Walking Dead, because you are supposed to entertain those thoughts. This was much more. This preemptive strike is a much grayer area.
Yeah.
And it's something that like nation states grapple with. You know, if you got a
Right.
clear and present danger, do you act on it now, or do you wait until it's clear? Like, you know, where do you value the sanctity of human life? And you know, just because you got it in for the Nazis, does that mean they all are in league and gleeful about shoving Jews in ovens? There's those are really interesting kind of like existential questions for life in general, which I think is much better than your just standard moralizing and what do we do to this wolf? And I guess it's that only with more stakes and drama to it. So
do you think any of the characters see it that way?
Oh, I bet.
You think so?
There will be, like when we get back to Alexandria, that's what I'm saying. There will be a lot of bitter recriminations and people saying I told you so, and people saying we never had any business and we were fools to listen to you, and if Deanna were still alive, none of this. Like, I feel like we're in for an episode or two of that fallout. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be some within Rick's group too.
Right.
But I think that's appropriate and interesting and stuff that should have happened and stuff that's like worthy of debate. It's not stupid or pointless.
Right. Beverly B. It would be nice if just once when someone steals clothes, they would be a little too big or something. Maybe in the Kingdom one size really does fit all. Yeah. They do kind of just fit.
Well,
Carol,
you got to remember that season 1 Carol, her job was to sort and wash the laundry. She's got inside information. It would be like, you know, me walking into a server room and knowing exactly what switches to steal. Well, of course I would. That was my profession.
That's true.
I'm inclined to cut her a little bit of slack on the slack selection department.
Okay. Good point.
She said the whole time she was crying, she was surreptitiously looking at the tags on the clothes and like, oh, God, the cobbler, so good.
Zach from Arkansas says, we're on the second episode and we're already getting... Okay, here's where some negativity starts. Shitty introductions to places, to new places, and background on characters we don't care about.
Someone really hated the choir.
I would propose this question, Zach. How can we care about characters we know nothing about? We have to first learn about them, yes?
So what? So how... man, again, I feel really bad because I feel like I can't tell whether I'm just off on my game or like my expectations have really drifted this low, but... If you're going to introduce a guy like the King Ezekiel and his kingdom, how do you do it? How do you ease people into that?
Yeah, I thought it was fine.
Now I will say that like I felt like in the comics that they kept this like this monologue that King Ezekiel gives about his true motivations came a lot later. So there's a lot more of this like, is this guy unhinged or not? And I kind of felt like it was wise to just put that front and center because it took a character that I think would have been dismissed as just ridiculous by a lot of people and gave it some nuance.
Mm-hmm. He says we learned more about the fucking tiger than what's happening to the group who just went through the most traumatic event in Walking Dead history.
Well,
really the only thing that kind of happened was it appears they're trying to poison the Savior's supply with walker-fed pork. But we've already seen the Terminus people eat Bob's leg and they were fine, so am I actually supposed to be giving this thought? Yeah, you're supposed to be giving it thought. I don't know what effect it would have, though.
Well, it's almost like it's a protest thing. It's like spitting in someone. Like everyone's like, oh, spitting.
It could be that,
Spitting in your hamburger is like the word. But honestly, 99 times out of 100, it's not going to do anything, and you're not going to know it. Like,
yeah. And I mean, that may be all this is. I don't know that they're expecting the Saviors to get sick or even hoping that they will. Maybe it's just a fuck you.
Because the other thing is they butcher and clean out the pigs. Like, if you let a pig eat a zombie hours before you butcher it, none of that rot is going to go right to them.
Right. And you can see that Richard is kind of the one with the attitude toward the Saviors, right? And he's the guy who says, I want their bellies full of rot.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it might just be, like you said, a kind of fuck you to the Saviors.
Yeah, but I think you are supposed to wonder. And also the other thing is... This group doesn't have all the experience that Rick's group's got, and they got different experiences, so they might be thinking that, hey, maybe we're onto something. Maybe this will make him sick eventually. Maybe we'll get lucky.
All right, let's go to Dan. He says, did anyone else think that Carol's sweet housewife routine was terrible in front of Ezekiel? It's no wonder that he saw right through it. When she first got to Alexandria and pulled out this persona, it was great because it wasn't over the top and included subtle things like struggling to pull a big gun off of her shoulder, etc. This time, it was so over the top that you don't even have to know the real Carol to know that this person was full of it. Just wondering if you guys noticed this as well.
I thought that was intentional.
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to get the idea that she's really struggling to give this any kind of face.
Right.
And the fact that Ezekiel caught on to it, like, I kind of think that they soft pedaled that, honestly, because he's like, oh, you had me fooled. Like, no, really?
Yeah.
If you're as self-aware as you claim to be, I wish that he had said something more along like, come on, Carol, you're not, you might think I'm a little off, but I'm not stupid.
Right.
But, they didn't choose to go that way.
He should have said something like, maybe if I looked a little less ridiculous, you would have pulled it off.
Right.
Maybe if this whole thing was a little less ridiculous.
Right. But instead, like, I guess that's a one false note of speech because he's talking about what a chameleon she is when really again, but also he does community theater. There's a lot of varying degrees of acting going on at those things.
I suppose so. And, it's just an entirely ridiculous thing that she's witnessing.
Right.
So Gabby says, leave it to The Walking Dead to bring you to a screeching halt. What is it with this show that gets you on a high only to drop you on your head? What a waste of time. Yeah, a lot of people disliking this episode.
I will say that I thought it was curious that they go away from the breaking news of Alexandria to have the kind of sleepy introduction to the kingdom. Like, if you're going to do this single storyline point of view, and I understand why they would do it for this, because it be very hard to match the two tones they're going for. But maybe you stick with Alexandria for another episode to get the resolution.
Yeah, I think you could have gone...
And then you go back to the kingdom.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah, I'm with you.
I mean...
I think it would have been perfect to have maybe... I don't know. Even, frankly, even Tara coming back is a hard thing to pull off with the tone of this.
It's just... there's so much shit. And that's...
She's got a lot of angst coming her way.
Yeah. Yeah. But they do need to... I don't know. They need to master the old... standby of episodic television where they just, you can have Data learning to tap dance at the same time a child is in sickbay, quarantine, and struggling to die, not to die. Like, you got to figure out how to get those tonal shifts and give due time to every character, or you got this, especially, I think it even gets worse when you're talking about serialized television, because people want to know what's going to happen next. And when you break that, I always found that super, like, the first time I can remember encountering that was in The Lord of the Rings, where, like, they get me in a fever pitch about what's going on at the Fellowship, and then they start a new book, and, like, that whole other book is completely different. Like, they gone into a different part of the world, and, like, what the hell? Huh. And then the next book is all the other, and, like, I was so used to having that interleave, so I never had to go more than a couple chapters wondering what was going on, that it was really distracting and bumming me out. And I don't know, like, that's a perfectly fine way to tell a story, but it's certainly something I decided as a 13-year-old that I didn't like.
Okay.
So,
and as a
40-year-old, I haven't cottoned to it yet.
Right. Mark from Milwaukee. We got a couple of doozy emails here not liking the show. He says, "Why? How does The Walking Dead follow their best episode, maybe ever, with their worst ever?" Calling this the worst episode ever, huh?
Yeah.
This turd was boring and dumb, with yet again more yammering on about good in the world. Yeah, I guess I don't see it that way. I didn't think last episode was their best, not by a long shot, and I don't think this is their worst, not by a long shot.
Yeah, so, like, I mean, I guess you got to grant that it was a different take on the world still, that there's still good in this world and whatnot, like...
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an evolution for those characters.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm arguing against myself 2 years ago at some of these emails.
Yeah, I'm gonna plow through another negative one here. Dan from Philly says, "Well, this episode was as much a contradiction as some of its heavy moralizing dialogue. What I was expecting was a fuck up of massive proportions. What I got was a pretty good episode with some solid character development." Oops, sorry, Dan, I misjudged your email. This is where the good stuff starts. After the CDC, prison terminus, the hospital in Alexandria, it doesn't feel out of place for Carol to be where she's at right now. I can't believe I'm saying this, but these last 2 episodes might be the start of something good.
The other thing that makes a big difference is the characters actively calling bullshit on it.
Yeah.
Like Carol's like, this, you know, like, you want to tell me the world's a good place? This is fantasy land. I have no time or patience for this.
Right.
I like the fact that, you know, not very many people were willing to call Morgan on his bullshit. Mm-hmm. And let him have a dangerous degree of freedom. And the fact that, I don't know, like I said, I don't want to go and litigate the last 2 seasons, but
sure.
I feel like there's a difference between morgalizing and what Ezekiel was doing in this episode.
Mm-hmm. All right, Nathan E. says, "I enjoyed this episode. I just wish the showrunners had a way to keep the plot moving forward other than splitting up the gang Scooby-Doo style."
Yep.
This has only been a problem since Gimple took over the show in season 4. Instead of getting 1 episode of the Kingdom, 1 episode of Alexandria, and 1 episode of the Saviors, can we just get 15 to 20 minutes of different locations in each episode?
Yep.
Kind of talked about that, so a little dry pie there.
You know, one thing I was just thinking, because I every time I think about interleaving these stories, I always think in terms of like Star Trek, The Next Generation, where you would literally, you know, like in between commercial breaks, you'd have touch on all the stories. Mm-hmm. Why can't they? The first half of the hour is all the Alexandria stuff or all the Kingdom stuff, and then we have a commercial break. I mean, obviously several commercial breaks, and then the back half of the hour is going to be dealing with Alexandria. Like, you don't have to, like, weave it, like, you know, where you've got Jerry yucking up about it's fruit time, juxtaposed with Maggie sobbing about Glenn.
Yeah, you don't have to smash cut between those things.
Yeah.
You can lead with the funny stuff and with the heart.
Or vice versa.
Puller, you know?
Or vice versa. Have some dramatic relief or comedic relief to kind of slightly sweeten.
Leave you feeling good at the end.
Yeah.
If you want.
You're
like a pomegranate. You bite into it, it's bullshit. You get down to the seeds, and it'll be sweet.
And from time to time, you're going to have to focus on for dramatic effect and for storytelling purposes. You know, Game of Thrones does it from time to time, where you have a single point of view for an entire episode. But that should be the exception, because I feel like it breeds impatience in your watchers. At least it does for me.
All right, Danny J from Vienna says, "I quite enjoyed the newest episode of The Walking Dead. Found Morgan a lot easier to take now that he isn't spouting his circle of life bullshit, and realized things aren't all black and white. But one thing bothered me in this episode. Is Ezekiel a moron? I mean, he meets Carol, works her out pretty quickly, and then proceeds to lay bare the entire sham that is the King character that he plays to Carol, the person he's never met before. I mean,
and who appears to be the arch skeptic.
Right. Is that wise? Either that, or he's actually sat down with every person in the kingdom and revealed his secrets. The joke being everyone plays along with his sham without realizing the person next to them also knows.
That would be pretty funny.
Right. No one will break the silence on the secret, but everyone knows.
Don't tell.
Right.
I don't think that's how humans work.
It does make me think if he genuinely can read people this well, he surely knows how dangerous the Saviors are. And him convincing Morgan and Carol, who he knows can hold their own in a fight, to stay leads me to the fact that he might be plotting something. I'm not sure how solid the Saviors are on Ezekiel thinking himself a king, but he surely has something up his sleeve. I believe this is why he wants Morgan to train that kid, too, that kid being Ben. We see they don't have a lot of fighting men, and I don't think a small 5-part harmony choir will hold back the evil dominance of Negan and company. We also find out in the episode they lost some of their best fighters during a building clear out, so maybe Ezekiel's cards on the table talk with Carol was him reaching out in desperation. He's got everything to gain and nothing to lose. What do you think about that?
It does raise an interesting question. What the fuck did Negan make of the kingdom when he first established contact?
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to see a flashback of that.
Yeah.
That scene.
Yeah.
His eyes must have bugged 3 feet out of his head.
Well, I mean, the tiger alone.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't know. I guess that would have been interesting. So what was the central thesis of the question? What is he trying to recruit badasses? I guess.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of the conclusion.
I feel like if I'm taking Benjamin at his word that Ezekiel is a reluctant king at this point, that he is very wary of unintentionally rhyming his phrases. He's very wary of keeping putting his people in harm's way because. I mean, if I unpack his psychology, he knows he's a sham leader. He's fake it till he's make it. He made leadership decisions that cause people death. Mm-hmm. If he's self-aware at all, which he is, that would cause you to think, like, oh, my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing this to make people happy. What I did on kind of a lighthearted lark got people killed. I cannot let that happen again. Like, I am not a battlefield commander. I am not a king with God-given right to rule. And these people followed my orders, got themselves killed. Like, I feel like that's kind of a mindfuck for that character. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of interesting things going on here with this setup. It is kind of a silly setup, I grant you, and I would love to hear more of like what the actual Kingdomites feel about the situation, because it's almost like a L. Ron Hubbard situation where you've got a cult founded from a guy on the top that knows it's all bullshit and it's cynical about it.
Right.
But the faithful are true believers.
And that's the thing. This is just the setup. Let's wait for them to knock it down. I want to see this unfold.
I think they're right to be skeptical because it's just like The Walking Dead to have all these questions that they raise and have no good answers to.
Yeah, there's that possibility as well.
And it's like, well, we got to get King Ezekiel and a tiger in here, so fuck it.
Right. Travis M. from Morgantown, West Virginia, says The Walking Dead suffers from having no end game. I think at times that is unfair because it is a show about surviving, and our opinions are colored by being fans of shows like Game of Thrones, for instance, where it's a race for the Iron Throne, or it has like this story driver in general.
Right.
Because there is no end game, it strives to shock us in order to keep us coming back. However, I did like the premiere, and it led to one of the best episodes of the show thus far, The Well. First, I would watch Carol and Morgan do anything at this point. They make for a great pairing. Second, the kingdom is one of the cooler places we have seen, especially because of its leader and the tiger. This is a place I would want to live in the zombie apocalypse. Ezekiel raises some really valid points to Carol. While the saviors are terrible and he is no more than a showman, he has truly created the one real society we have seen following the virus. Our world works because we believe in it, and we each try to play our parts. Rick never got that. Alexandria tried to do that but failed to understand the exterior threat. Negan and the Saviors believe chaos is the answer. The kingdom believes the lie and appeals to the heartfelt hope we as humans desire. I'm extremely excited about the possibility of this arc and the season. He does have a question here at the end. He says, why does Ezekiel ask Morgan to train Ben? But we kind of already talked about that.
Yeah.
He theorizes that maybe he needs an heir. And, it would be an interesting development if either of them were to die. What would happen to the kingdom?
That's true. And he leads from the front, too. I mean, he's out there actively dispatching zombies and leading them on these raids, so...
It's possible that would happen.
If Ezekiel dies, and we've seen, it makes me think of that Prophets of Doom episode from Dan Carlin, where they talk about, is it Munster? Where that one cult, the one where the cult leader takes over.
They box themselves in the city, right?
And everything kind of was going okay until the one main guy died.
Yeah,
and then it just a succession of goons and opportunists took over and just made the place a hell on earth.
Yeah,
and you can see the kingdom who takes over. Like maybe if Richard takes over, it wouldn't be too bad. Maybe he leads the people on a People's Crusade against Negan, gets them all butchered.
Maybe, yeah.
You never know. But that is the fragile nature. It's even more like if Rick goes down, you could easily see a world in which Abraham or Michonne or Maggie or Glenn or even Daryl had taken the lead, and things kind of keep going because he wasn't so much a cult of personality. Whereas Ezekiel is totally a cult of personality.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there's not giant Ezekiel head banners on the buildings and stuff. Almost, I guess that would be too creepy North Korea for the show, but that's kind of what they're doing.
A little too Big Brother for my taste.
Uh-huh.
Let me ask you this. Do you think Ezekiel's a badass?
I don't know, because all he's done is dispatched helpless zombies.
Right.
But he does have a tiger.
He does, but that doesn't mean
he doesn't take the
himself.
tiger out in the field with him too. Like I was kind of surprised
right.
when they went on the pig raid that he didn't have Shiva at his side.
Yeah, get that tiger up on a horse. Let's do this. Come on.
Ride the tiger like a horse.
There you go. That might be more
like
plausible.
go He-Man with this shit.
Yeah. It's got a life debt to you. Come
yeah,
on.
yeah.
To really exploit that life debt.
It weighs 1,000 pounds. What do you weigh? A 185? I think you could carry that on its shoulders. I can't wait for this tiger to get unleashed against man or undead.
Yeah,
it's going to be like if a pig can do that to a walker, what's a 1,000-pound killing machine going to do?
Rampage. All right, I'm going to leave it at that on the positive note of what. I'm just going to leave you guys with the thought of what a 1,000-pound killing machine could do.
Oh, I was wrong. A female tiger maxes out at 370 pounds. I drastically overestimated how
that's nothing.
Males can get to 700. But yeah, sorry.
Can't pigs get to 370 pretty easily?
Probably.
They're a little denser.
I would definitely take a 370-pound pig over a 370-pound tiger.
Okay.
I mean, I think I can take the pig. The tiger would just be, it'd be a shit show. Like, I better have a gun.
The pigs don't have any sharp feet to grab you with.
No, yeah. Like, they can tusk you. They can. I mean, like a wild boar will rip you up, but I'd still rather fight a wild boar than a goddamn tiger.
Yeah, it looks like these pigs in this episode didn't have tusks or anything.
No, a tiger's a disemboweling machine.
Yeah.
But isn't that, like, most of the wild boar in, like, the South, aren't they, like, essentially feral pigs? Like I thought the alt pigs had but like in the wild they would start selecting for larger tusks again.
They would, yeah.
So
I just haven't had the time yet. Sure.
Anyway,
okay, that's it for feedback.
Okay, I got a couple spoiler thoughts. We're gonna have a spoiler.
Okay.
Do you have spoiler feedback?
Sure, I can do a couple quick spoiler emails.
Okay, because otherwise it'll be a 5-minute stand-up routine.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it for the episode. We will be back next week for another one of these.
Watching Dead at baldmove.com, of course, for your feedback, and forums.baldmove.com if you like to get on the weekly forum thread.
And if you're into spoilers, stick around after the music. We're going to be doing a short spoiler section. If you're not, we will see you next week. Until then, I'm Jim.
I'm A.Rron. See ya.
And we're back with the spoiler section.
You in the mood to talk about another Kirkman remix? Mix?
Why not? Let's do it.
So in the comics, Michonne and Ezekiel fall in love.
Okay, right.
In the show, Michonne and Rick, they got the Rishon thing going on. She's unavailable for to initiate the romance plot. Carol is dead in the comics. So we shove her forward into the King Ezekiel love plot.
Into his clutches.
Does that, like, because I thought of when, King Ezekiel and Michonne got together, I'm like, well, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to make that sound too racial, but, like, they looked like, I mean, they're a very striking couple. You put them together, and it's like, yeah, this looks like king and queen almost.
Sure.
And that's kind of how he courted her. Like, he was looking for, whereas Carol, I don't know. Like, I definitely think she's prime for a love plot because I thought that she was kind of always barking up Daryl's tree. Didn't go anywhere. I never really bought in her relationship with Carhart.
Right.
I thought
it wasn't so much a relationship as...
She's way too bad.
It was a throwaway relationship.
Yeah. She was just, making time with him.
Yeah.
But Ezekiel definitely has got a lot more... I mean, I don't know whether he's a badass or not, but he's certainly a stronger personality. And
right.
And Carol has become a strong personality on her own right. And kind of I thought that some of his discussion about faking it till you make it maybe appealed to her. Because she went from mousy housewife and not even mousy, like repressed and completely neglected and treated as almost slave labor by her husband, to like this respected community leader, to like a Rambo type badass. that's kind of an improbable rise to power, and something that would give her insight into how a man like Ezekiel could rise to the same station. A guy who's a zookeeper and a sideshow player, and now he's king of this joint.
Yeah, maybe. And I mean, maybe she's gonna fake it till she makes it on the city front, like the kingdom front.
But that's one of the reasons I was so. I mean, I during the live watch and even this podcast, I'm thinking like, are they actually laying this love track down, or am I seeing it because all of these speeches were given in the context of him wooing Michonne?
Right.
And I know where that went.
That's probably part of it. But I mean, not knowing any of that stuff, I think. But there were hints of it.
But the other thing in the comics is Michonne was just never that into Ezekiel. Because at the end of the day, Ezekiel is kind of a faker, and he is. If my recollection of Ezekiel is, he is a bit. I mean, he's a pretty noble guy, a pretty righteous dude, but he's a little bit oversensitive to his own failures, a little bit reactionary, a little bit overly cautious, which is something that Michonne doesn't really have any patience for. A little, not as strong as he lets on, which is kind. Whereas I guess that would also be bugaboos for Carol. Like, when she finds out, like, I don't care how good his pomegranates are, when she finds out this appeasement strategy with the saviors, I mean, how does the modern Carol take that? Does she see that as prudent? Does she see that as lunacy? Maybe. I mean, how much of a realist do you think she is at this point? Well, to me, they used a lot of symbology to show that she is a realist. Like, that's, I think, what the whole her humanizing zombies in the beginning and then seeing for what they are in the end, that was kind of like showing that her and Morgan have kind of come to this stable position. Right. But still, like, knowing what I know about the Saviors and knowing what Carol knows about and her experiences with Woodbury and all these other things, like, I just don't think she's going to have the patience for someone saying, oh, yes, this is a sustainable deal. We can just keep giving these madmen what they want, and if for whatever reason we fall short one week, they're going to kill one of us. Right. I mean, she might not. And kill the best of us even. They're not going to do, they're going to hit us where it hurts the most. But maybe she can be convinced, I mean, she was convinced that killing was not the path by Morgan. Right. She can change her mind, certainly, so maybe Ezekiel can do that for her. Okay, what did you say? You implied that there was some. Yeah, got a couple of emails. Teej. I'm gonna call it Teej, like TJ, except all right, spelled out. From northern Wisconsin says, "I love your podcast. Like to hear your thoughts on how they've been following the comics since they left the prison. I feel like since Andrea died, they've done a great job of taking the best parts from the source material and building up from there." I don't know. So since Andrea died, that'd be right in the middle of the Woodbury stuff, toward the end of the Woodbury stuff. But right, I don't know. I mean, essentially Alexandria is between that, right? And I guess Terminus. Yeah, there's the Terminus or the Hunter's plot. Terminus, and I thought was pretty good. I felt like they needlessly fucked with and that's the reason I stopped. It was my pattern to, like, I read all the way up to the Whisperers arc in the comics, and I stopped there. And then my habit was to then reread the arc of where I thought the show was likely to go. Like, I'm going to read these 16 episodes of what I think they'll cover in this half season, so it's fresh in my mind. And what I found that led to a disastrous policy of me constantly nitpicking every single time I felt that the show made a worse decision than the comics, which I felt was like at least 50-50, if not more frequently. And it was bumming me out. So I think last year was the year that I announced that I'm not going to do that anymore, because like the Hunter plot, like I got enough feedback where people are like, you're just being kind of like a comic purist dick about it, that I'm like, okay, fine. The only way I can turn that part of my brain off is just starve it. Right. So I think what I'm going to do is figure out whatever they cover this year, and I might reread it afterwards, and then like as part of the wrap up, season wrap up we do in a spoiler section, I'll kind of talk about variances and how that impacted it. But so I'm kind of a bad person to judge how they did it. Like, I know that they did. I mean, my biggest criticisms, I guess, in the post Terminus plot is just how damn long it took everything to get into place, and how much navel gazing, and how like they didn't. some of the stuff that Glenn was trying to do with Nicholas was, I thought, strained and dumb, and I don't know. But I think they did real justice to Rick's arc and how he kind of took over Alexandria by force, and I feel like they're doing really good work with Negan and his guys so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even.
But there you go. It's been 3 to 4 years since I read. I think issue 100 is where the one where Glenn gets beat to death. It's probably been 4 years since I read that issue. So it's been that long since and I stopped. The last time I read it was I read through the Hunter arc because I knew they were going there in that after the terminus that half season, and I stopped. So.
Okay, another question from TG here. Also, do you think Negan ends up in jail in the season finale, season 8's mid-season, or just some random episode following a 3-episode arc of Morgan's backstory debating corn syrup content on Duane's juice? Duane's juice?
My ideal situation is...
spelled not how I would spell Dwayne, with a U instead of W.
My fondest hope is that they take these 8 episodes to lead up to All Out War, and they then have the All Out War that they come back in February, and they do the All Out War, and they conclude just as they do in the comic books with Rick deciding to imprison Negan, and then starting season 8 would be the 2-year flash forward, so Chandler Riggs can finally start playing Carl age appropriately, and then the show proceeds as normal from there. Or as normal as they can in a world where Andrea's dead and Carol's alive and Michonne is sleeping with Rick. Like there's already a lot of huge Kirkman signature remixes going on. But I feel like that, and I don't care when they remix the characters. I actually think that's kind of cool. But when they throw away or fuck up plot developments is where I think it's dumb. Like, for example, if I want to go back and bitch about last week, why do you kill Denise? Why do you give Abraham's Denise death, or give Denise Abraham's death, if you're going to kill Abraham 2 episodes and then anyway?
Oh.
To me, that screams they're in the writer's room like, man, we got to really go fucking balls out next year, so let's kill Abraham and Glenn. Like, I don't feel like they wanted to do that, and I felt like they were forced to do that to try to salvage something from the way they mishandled it, and that's the kind of shit that gets them in trouble.
Right. Speaking of getting in trouble, John D. from Tucson has a question. Do you think they might go with a full-on Kirkman remix with Negan instead of imprisoning him? He might be killed off. He's when the all-out war.
If they do that, then they truly are lost. Because they set up with Rick saying, I'm going to kill you. They set that arc up. And if he just ends up just fulfilling it like some kind of cheesy 80s action hero, then why? What the fuck? Why do any kind of philosophy or moralizing on this show?
Right.
Like, what is the arc? What is the, like that's the true start of civilization when Rick decides to, start a penal system rather than everyone than the code of Rick, which is if you kill someone you die. Like, to me, if they do that, then that might make me stop watching the show.
I feel like as a fan, that would be the more inherently satisfying thing to do, though, is to make him finally able to carry out the word that he gave him about killing him.
But I've seen Rick get people kill him good. That's not anything different. Like, to me,
this is I'm setting this up as like the potential trap.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I just feel like that if they do that, they misunderstand their own arc so much, or are so willing to screw with it for whatever reason that like I for damn sure won't read any more comic books until this show is done. Why would I? It can just fuck up with my expectations. Like right now, I haven't read anything past the Whispers, and I thought about maybe treating myself after the season and reading, because I'm kind of super interested to know where the story has gone from there. But if they pull something like that, then there's no fucking way.
So I've asked the question, like, what happens? I've theorized about how this could be another show like Game of Thrones, where the TV show catches up with the source material, and then what do you do? There's also another possibility of this, which is the show just fucking goes forever. Like, Like, we could be staring down 20 years of Walking Dead like they said they wanted to do.
It's like The Simpsons, yeah.
And it's ever evolving, and it still hasn't caught up with the comics, and now we're...
I don't think you can do... I don't know, because...
We're still at the height of The Walking Dead 7 seasons in.
It seems like the run...
That's surprising to me.
It seems like those really long-run shows are almost always animated, like Flintstones and Simpsons, because like it's hard to lock down a guy like Chandler Riggs. Like, hey, you're going to do Walking Dead for all of your professional life, and that's the way it is. Like,
and if you don't do that and you kill them off, then you have to reestablish characters that people love just as much.
If it's the
that's a difficult thing to do.
And if this is the story of Rick and Carl the whole time, I mean, so I meant to say that earlier on. The guy asked about, like, you know, the open-ended nature of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Do you think Kirkman has like an end in mind? Like when he says this, well, you'll fully appreciate that this is actually the story of, you know, Carl. What does he mean by that? Does he just mean like I kind of generally want to go in a Prince Valiant situation where the main character gives way to his son and then that's going to be the bulk of the story going forward? Or do you think he actually has a, like, in this issue, Rick is going to die and I'm going to have this thing as where Carl's the defining moment of a leader and here's where Carl falls in love and he's going to have this many babies and... Negan's going to come back out of...
a little more nebulous than that.
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's the former where it's...
I wish he knew where he was going. Because I just don't, like... How many years can this show run?
You know, we asked that 4 years ago. And if you told me that in Season 7 it would be going stronger than it ever had before, I would have been very surprised.
I can't believe it's come back, too. It's kind of amazing.
Right.
Now, the other thing is, like, I just don't... From the actor's perspective...
I mean, 10 seems almost guaranteed at this point.
But I just go back to the actor's perspective, is like, who wants to be... It'd be one thing if this show was winning a bunch of Emmys and this was like, you know, the best thing on television, quote unquote. I mean, it's the biggest thing on television, and maybe they can start giving Andy Lincoln some executive producer credits and... You know, I don't know. They talked Chandler Riggs' parents into signing some crazy indentured servitude agreement, like
right.
But I mean, they do seem to love working on this show. Like I've never usually they got rid of the malcontents, all the Darabont faithful, and it does seem like Andrew Lincoln and Norman Reedus have a hoot making this show. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's good enough. Like Andrew Lincoln's like, I had a successful indie career. I've done some things, and like I'm content to do this until they decide to kill me. But I mean, can you imagine this show being on for 20 years?
With those people
it would be unprecedented
at the top of the actors list here.
Yeah, like I could see
Andrew Lincoln.
I could see Walking Dead being on air 20 years from later,
right? Like
Fear, or like if they figure like, well, Fear was a big mistake. Let's reboot something better. You know, like Dread the Walking Dead. I don't know, something. But The Walking Dead being on for 20 years seems hard to believe.
Yeah, it does. I don't know. It still shows no signs of slowing. So we'll just have to stick around and see.
Yeah.
If we're still doing this podcast 13 years from now.
There's a bigger question.
Like, fuck me. I don't want to do that. But that'll be interesting.
If I start collecting Medicare... And I'm still and Social Security, and I'm still doing the Walking Dead podcast. It'll be time to re-examine my life's choices.
Yes, it will. All right, I think that's about it for this episode of The Watching Dead. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week.
See ya.